Hey y'all, thanks for joining me again. I'm measuring out my parchment paper now for my sourdough for my pot, and I'm going to put my pot in the oven as it starts to preheat and get ready. Now I'm taking my sourdough out of the refrigerator and I'm actually removing it from the basket and putting it on my parchment paper to get it ready to score. I am definitely not a professional scorer, so at this point I'm just going to do some basic scoring to make sure that my bread is ventilated well. So I'm going to do one deep score down one side of the bread to make sure that it has plenty of ventilation, and then I'm going to do some basic scoring at the top just to make sure that it has room to ventilate at the top also. One big score down the middle, not very deep, and a few little scores down each side of the big score should be sufficient. Now I've taken my preheated pot out of the oven, and I'm going to take my dough on the parchment paper and put it inside the preheated pot. And then I'm going to trim down the sides of my parchment paper just because sometimes it gets a little burnt, and then when you try to pick it up it falls apart. So it's just going to fit in the pot a little better, and it's going to be easier to put the lid on and hold up better. And now I'm going to place the lid on very carefully as this lid and pot are hot. And then I'm going to place it in the oven to bake. So while this is baking, and I spoke about this in my previous video, is I'm going to rinse off all of my tools that I used for baking so that they're nice and clean outside of my sink so I don't have any sort of plumbing issues. So here I'm just showing you how I rinsed them off in the bowl that I was using. And I'm going to rinse off each tool, and then I'm actually going to go around the bowl itself and kind of take away any particles on the outside of the bowl so that everything is thoroughly cleaned and there is absolutely nothing left on any of my tools to cause an issue for my plumbing. And then when I'm finished actually rinsing out the bowl, making sure there's nothing on the outside of the bowl, I'm then going to take this bowl outside and dump the water in my yard. So that way there's no issues. See, a nice clean bowl, free of any sort of flour. Now I can take it to the sink and wash it with some soap and water. So the timer has gone off for baking this sourdough bread with the lid. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off, and then I'm going to push the sourdough back in and reset the timer for the remainder of the baking time. Now the final timer has gone off and my bread is done baking. So I'm going to remove it from the oven. Look how pretty golden it is. So now I'm actually going to remove the bread with the parchment paper from the pot to begin the cooling process. So now I've located a wire rack, and I'm going to actually take the bread itself out and set it on the wire rack to cool. So now you just leave it on the wire rack to cool until it is completely cooled so that it can maintain all of its moisture, and then it's ready to eat.